But I think once you make your intentions clear and you kind of set boundaries, you have to stick to them.
1000%.
Because that other person, sometimes they will and sometimes they won't. And also, I think that you need to sometimes connect with a third party that's more objective.
Welcome to the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips. As a leading manifestation advisor with a process that's, well, radically different from the old New Age model, mine is rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and my energetic gifts. I created this podcast to help you expand your subconscious limiting beliefs about the potential of deserving the manifestations you're calling in. Therefore, you're tuning into this podcast series to show your subconscious that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, you've already started the process of manifesting it. It's finally the holiday weekend. I'm stoked. Are you? I mean, I've just been resting in general, but this feels like a deeper kind of rest. Today, I'm flying up to Vashon, Washington with Max. That's where his mom has a home there, and I'm actually scoping it out for the next retreat house. I have a couple of places on my radar: Maine, Scotland, Vashon, and maybe Amagansett. We'll see what the universe throws at me. It's actually funny because last 2 Sundays ago, Saturday, actually, I was out to dinner with Max at Inn at the 7th Ray, which is in Topanga, because a little bushfire kind of set off in Topanga. It was still fire season. And we couldn't leave the canyon because we wouldn't be able to get back in until the fire was all sorted. We were actually supposed to head off to Krista's engagement party from Almost 30, which I'm really sad to have missed. And we're sitting there, and we always love this little Hobbit restaurant. It's really hobbity and cute if you haven't been there. It kind of feels like Deachin's a little bit from Big Sur. Really romantic. If you're in LA, you're like in a fairyland. So we're sitting there, and I really had my eye on the Vashon market for a while because most places that come up are like straight up Home Depot builds, which just isn't my style. If I did make my manifestation list of wherever this next house is, and I really do want it to be a witchy Victorian or, like a Scottish stone farmhouse, or kind of a very beachy old shingles vibe, like an Amagansett situation. And so we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I pop onto Zillow, and this house had just gone live on Vashon that day, priced super to sell. I've been watching this market every day. All shingles, like so many windows, totally me. 1.5 acres on the part of the island. It's called Murray Island. That's really desirable. And I turned to Max and I'm like, I should just make a blind offer. Because anybody who's out there and, buying houses and stuff, I really want to encourage that you can make offers. It's kind of like putting something on hold. I learned that while shopping for the retreat house because my stepmom was my realtor, and she kind of really explained that to me. And I'm like, oh, this is something people have to talk about. It's like very projectory. You can kind of crack the code. You just make an offer and you put a deposit down. And if within the allotted amount of time you decide you don't want it, you pull out, which isn't always awesome for the seller, but I'm always a serious buyer. And if I'm going to do a blind offer like that, it's because I'm very serious. And so I'm sitting there with Max, and he's like, no, think about it. He's like, it'll be there when we get there. And I know these things. And I was like, there is no way. This is so good. It's priced to sell. Somebody's just been waiting for this place. Like woke up the next morning, mid-afternoon, it was pending. So somebody put an offer down. So note to self, I will never listen to Max again. I will follow all of my pings. But we all know in manifestation, so that's a big symptom that I need to follow my pings always, because I had that instant ping to do that. And secondly, obviously it's meant to be an expander. So people who are out there manifesting, we talk about this, but for the newbie, when you're, say, manifesting a home or dating's a great example of this. and like your list shows up and it's everything you've wanted and you've gone on a couple of dates, but they're just not that into you. So they part away or it's not right for them. And you're like, what's wrong with me? My manifestation didn't stick. That's not what's happening. They are your expander to show you the thing that's going to be even better and more right for you is on its way. And this is a final expansion that you're needing to believe that such is possible. So do not despair when it doesn't work out, because that's something we've been conditioned to do, to go to the negative and, and I'm not good enough and everything good goes to everybody else, these limiting beliefs. That's not what's happening energetically. So don't go there. It's actually a time to double down on your worth and your expansion. And sometimes they can actually be expanders and tests. So they can be all those things and emotionally unavailable. That was an expander and a test, which means your thing's very close. So I just want to highlight that. I also threw a fit that night to Max and told him I am never listening to him again with really mean emojis. And and I don't even think we had a phone call that night. I wasn't totally mad at him. I was actually mad at myself because I know my manifestation process. So, and only something greater and better, the right place is supposed to come. And I really do actually believe that and know that so truthfully because, again, my trust muscle is so strong. I've been doing this forever. So whoever ends up with that house, they're going to have a wonderful home that was so meant for them. But so we're heading up to Vashon, and I love this island. Anybody, you heard Melissa and I talk about Washington a lot on our episode of Osea, because she's from sort of a commune on Orcas Island. And then we really went into Vashon before we started talking, because she's like, I'm thinking of looking up there. And I am like, I am too. And I love it because I've talked about this a few times recently. I've just had it with LA during the fall and the winter. I've just had it. I can't do a desert. I can't do another fire season. Indian, summer, it's just not for me. And so it feels like I'm going up there to just ferns and wet and moss, and you're on the bay and the ocean. You have like all of the pines and the trees and the rain. And I'm just desperately, desperately yearning for that again. May it be Vashon, Maine, Scotland, Amagansett. And so the Vashon component actually is just sort of selfish because it's a 2.5, 3-hour flight for me. And I just pop into Seattle right over the ferry. So it's kind of a selfish move. We'll see what pops up though. But yeah, I'm just packing really cozy sweaters. I really went into those cashmere sweaters I loved from Tina the store. So those are in my bag with me. Rose hips. That's, as you know, I've been talking about all the unscented, and that's my favorite oil. And in fact, I saw it for the very first time in real life on Vashon a few years ago. So I really kind of equate Vashon with rose hips, which is sort of my favorite thing right now. My blue blocks, eye blockers that I love. We're coming out with a great episode with Andy Mant again. It's a follow-up episode. And this one's going to blow everybody's mind. I recorded it last week. And I was like, how do I not know some of these things, especially when it comes to hormones and fertility? We go so deep into male and female infertility, also really deep into that most of the diseases we're seeing on our planet, people are really low in melatonin. And he's so good at reading off double-blind studies. So it's super science-based. And so ever since we had that conversation, I've just been really, I go at the end of it, I'm like, Andy, give us a full perfect day in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, which can just be argued to be, fall, winter, spring, summer. And so he walks us along a perfect day with great hacks, like something as simple as putting electrical tape over all of the electronics in your house that emit little blue flashing lights or blue lights. And he really walks us through which glasses to wear when. And then, of course, I'm loving, and that's what I have packed with me because I'm really trying to not be on devices while I'm there. I'm absolutely loving their sleep mask. It's my favorite. I've been talking about it for a while. He sent me one to try, and I bought 2 out of pocket, and I totally forgot to use the code that we have for them, which is listed below, magnetic, all caps, for 15% off. So you'll end up really checking that out from the episode. I do know he did mention that they're going to have a humongous Black Friday sale this weekend. So stay tuned if these are resonating with you. Look out for that. We also will be having a humongous Black Friday sale on Friday through Cyber Monday. It's our biggest sale of the year. What you can look forward to, and you can start today. We're only releasing this to podcasters today. And then we're going to tell the rest of the community by our other social channels on Friday. So you guys are the head starters. And essentially the way it rolls is you use the link below that's listed, and you can either use it to get $18 off a month versus our $24.99 a month. So it's $18 a month when you sign up, and that's for the year-long membership. We no longer do the 6 months because there just weren't enough signups. So that's $18 for each month for the year rather than $24.99. And this offer goes for existing members as well. When you follow the link below and you sign up for this sale, you get in at the $18 price. And automatically on Monday, your old membership will be canceled and you'll roll right into this one. Or use the link below to get 50% off any of our a la carte. You're also automatically going to be, it will be on our new platform that's launching in January, which only people from the speaking tour have had access to. We've had hundreds sign up from the speaking tour to be our beta testers. And now we're only opening it up to people for this weekend, and it'll officially launch in January. So you will get the first trial at it. And some really cool highlights of the new platform is that all of the DIs, so all of the DIs are new in it for the most part, or the re-recorded old ones that are more targeted. Also, they're not downloadable, but like Spotify, they're savable. So any DIs you want are savable in it. Therefore, you can listen to them when you're offline. So if you're on the flight, if you are in the woods and don't have Wi-Fi access, that's a huge part of it. I'm trying to think, there's so many. There's an app. You can download an app only if you're an iPhone user. So there's an app, so it makes it super accessible. You don't have to sign in all the time. Easy access. It really shows you, it's like modular. So it'll show you what you've completed, your progress, where to go. There's some updates inside of it. And there's so much more I'm forgetting. I just don't have the bandwidth because my brain's been so foggy from adrenal fatigue. But that is really, really exciting. And yeah, otherwise, we have the referral program, which is Give 20, Get 20. There's a link below for that you can sign up for. So any of your friends you tell about the podcast, now you can make money, they make money, everybody wins. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm so excited this weekend. I'm going to be wearing cozy sweaters. We are going to be eating healthy and sleeping a lot. We're going to be binging The Crown because I was at the Forest Retreat House last week and Max told me if I started without him, we would break up. So he's like, you will lose all of my trust. So we'll actually be binging that together this weekend and spending time with his awesome mom and her really cool brother and sister-in-law that I love. They all live on Vashon, and his niece. And they're just such a cool, eclectic, intelligent, really stylish group of people. They really inspire me every time I'm around them. And then we, of course, will be checking out the little hobbity areas of Vashon. They have a great little old smoothie shop, which I'm not having, but they have, like hippie food in it. They have a really great Thai place on the restaurant, and some cool restaurants have actually been opening up, farm to table style, that we got to check out last time. And then on Saturday, I'm going to pop out with the realtor and just sort of look, even though I know what's on the market. I'm like, what do you know that's off market? So we're going to check out things and then come home Sunday. And after that, I'm gearing up for the speaking tour. I leave, I think, the following Wednesday for New York. And for anybody who doesn't know, so many of you have reached out to see if we have more tickets. And it was becoming like bombarding to ask if we have more tickets. Therefore, we've opened up and gotten a way bigger venue. We had 420 sold out, and now it's opened up to 600. I don't know what the final count is today. In fact, I think it's actually getting closer to that. So if you are wanting to attend the New York show, do make sure to pop to the link below and catch your tickets now. because I actually really do know that that's selling out quickly. And I have to thank you guys so much, because even our shows that are super far out, so we had certain head counts for Sydney and Vancouver and London, and all of them are at like 98% sold out, or I think London's still 88% sold out. So we're going to try to open those up to wider, even bigger, and look for bigger spaces. So definitely grab those tickets. And I just am blown away by how fast these are selling out, and so stoked. Let's get into today's guest. Today's guest is really an exciting guest. I love Josey. So Josey is a really good friend of Max's. They used to be business partners. They had a line together. I think it was called Dyer and Jenkins. So I got to meet Josey as Max's business partner first, and then I really got to watch him do all the steps to walk away from that business for them to dissolve it together and go into a completely different industry and into vaping and CBD and, well, now CBD, but vaping. And I got to watch their company explode. He became a massive expander for me, to the capacity where they've like relocated to Austin because they're so successful. And it's been so cool to watch him, because we really go through it in this episode. When I first met him, he was a lot younger, and we kind of term it like this. He was sort of a fuckboy. We all know that, like chicks all know that from dating. And I got to watch his trajectory through dating, and then reconnecting, which is such a beautiful, inspiring story, with his childhood sweetheart. And I don't want to give away all the details, but anybody out there that needs relationship expanders, it's so sweet and so beautiful. And she's incredible and grounding and just a lovely woman. And so he gives awesome dating advice. We get to see fuckboy to like total committer, double downer. And we also get to hear a lot of business expansion. And most importantly, we get to hear his recovery story, which is really, really expansive. And he became sober at a very young age from heroin. And you don't get to hear a lot of those. And so I really, really love Josey. I'm so excited to share him. I think he's going to expand people on multiple levels in this. He's funny. He's dynamic. He's a Gemini. We all know they're the second quickest manifestors. And then we go into talking about some tips of how you can stay calm with CBD through the fucking holidays with family. And for anybody who gets really interested in his CBD line, it's called Hug CBD. He did offer a code, which is Holiday Hugs. You can actually see it below for proper spelling and lowercase, uppercase situation. So check that out below. Use the code. And he goes into why it's a really, really precious and special version of CBD. And yeah, let's get into it. Now we're good. We were coming back from New York, and there was this woman speaking to Josey, feeling like he's nasally from allergies right now. And there was this woman, she was like the quintessential older New Yorker. And all of a sudden, we were in first class too, because it's easier to take the dogs if we roll that way. You know, right, they give you less room. Of a hassle, more room, they can sit. And she's sitting right behind us, and she grabs a flight attendant when she gets on, and she's like, "Are the dogs going to be sitting there?" Like, just, and she was like, "That's disgusting." Like, it was so intense that we didn't say anything, but by the end, we're like, should we trip her on the way out of the terminal?
Yeah. Barley, you don't deserve that kind of treatment.
That was so, yeah. What do you even call that? Like, she's a speciesist?
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
I just don't understand people that don't like dogs.
They must have just not had them, because it really is. You have two.
Yeah, and I've had them my whole life.
You have?
I've always had dogs growing up.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where we didn't have a dog.
Same. I've had, literally in my adult life, I've had one from high school that followed me here to live here with me. I've always had a dog.
Yeah, they're great little companions. Look at Barley. She's like a little Buddha.
Yeah. Barley thinks you came here to have a podcast with her. When we used to take brand photos, Barley would find a way to always photobomb everything.
To sneak into frame.
Yes. All right. Well, let's kick this off. Josey, tell us about your cultural upbringing and background.
Oh my gosh. How do I even describe my cultural upbringing and background? Well, I was raised in a very small town outside of Philadelphia. It has about 5,000 people today. So I think growing up, it was like 3,000 and has grown to 5,000 over the years.
How big was your high school?
Oh, I think we graduated with like 200 some kids.
But that was in your class or total of high school?
No, that was in my class.
Wow,
Because
so that's
the
a big
neighboring
school.
town put their, like, both towns put their kids in the same high school.
I see.
So it wasn't like 30 kids or anything like that. However, I definitely wasn't exposed to too much living in a small town like that. So,
what are you guys? Are you like Irish?
That cultural upbringing.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, and my mom, who I'm sure we'll discuss more in depth later, she was adopted. So we actually didn't really know. We knew on my dad's side it was Scottish and Russian, but they don't really like live their cultural upbringing. Like they're just it's very just American.
Yeah.
Like stereotypical middle class white American people. You might want to cut that.
No, that's fine.
And and my mom actually got in, like, when she got sober and she started going on her path, one of the big things for her was finding out where she was really from, because she was adopted. And so she ended up finding all of her family members and stuff like that.
Even parents.
Her mother and father were already both passed away. But she ended up connecting with like half brothers and all this stuff. And she's just, European mutt, Scottish, Irish, English, all that kind of stuff. She says one of her descendants came over on the Mayflower.
Everybody does.
But
my cousin claims that. I'm like, we're related.
Right. Well, and so I never really dug into it too deep, but she loves Ancestry.com. Like obsessively goes on there and tries to track both sides of the family. It's like a hobby of hers. So she claims that one of them came over on the Mayflower. She's definitely going to listen to this podcast and be a little salty that I'm like taking it with a grain of salt, but whatever.
What was her sobriety journey? What was that like growing up?
Well, she got sober when I was 15. So we were like, I don't know. It's interesting being a child of an alcoholic.
Amen.
Because,
I'm one.
Yeah.
Like currently.
Okay. Yeah. So, firsthand, it's because when you grow up with it, you just think that that's normal. And fortunately for me, she wasn't, and neither was my dad. Like neither one were abusive. It wasn't that kind of alcoholic upbringing. It was the kind of alcoholic upbringing where maybe they're just not as attentive as other parents would be. Like I was never the type of kid that had like breakfast cooked for them in the morning before school. It was more like she would wake up, take us to school, go home, go to bed when she was drinking. And so when she told my younger brother and I that she was going to rehab because she believed she was an alcoholic, we were like, really? Like we didn't know, we're just totally ignorant to it. And so she went in, did her 30-day stay. And at that time, I didn't even know that my grandfather on my dad's side was also like 22 years sober.
Wow.
So I have it on both sides of the family. And she went in and we learned a little bit about addiction and alcoholism by going to visit her. But when you get out of treatment, that's when you really start your journey, because basically when you go to rehab or detox or whatever, you're effectively buying clean time. But the real work starts afterward. And, at that time I didn't know much about what she was actually doing. And like looking back on it, like I was a nightmare as a teenager. So like my poor mother.
Oh God, going through all that at the same time.
And meanwhile, like her son's smoking pot and doing drugs in the basement. And so, yeah, her journey was something that I didn't really understand because of my own self-absorbed nature, I guess. You know, I mean, I was in the middle of my own addiction at that point in time. I don't think I really knew it at that point. But yeah, I remember her going through, I remember like, you know, she started to just seem healthier, like clear-eyed. She was like, you know, then starting to focus on fitness, and because she was overweight at the time and she didn't want to be anymore, and because she didn't feel good. And so she started like losing weight and changing her diet, and you know, diet culture is a whole other thing that I'm sure you can address on another
Totally.
podcast.
Of every woman of that time.
Yeah, and I'm not qualified to speak on that type of stuff at all, but it's interesting when you see the lights come back on for someone, no matter what they're going through, whether that's depression or alcoholism, drug addiction, whatever it is that they're going through. When they go through a process and the lights come back on, it's really, really rewarding. And I saw that in my mother. And I think 16, 17-year-old me wasn't really aware that that's what was happening. It was just a noticeable difference. Have I talked about my mother enough?
No, I love it.
Okay.
Well, for you too, I mean, that's a great segue into your addiction and sobriety journey as well.
Yeah. So I think I can touch on the cultural side of the small town living and how I guess that sort of had a part in my addiction. I think some people are genetically predisposed to addiction. I certainly feel that I am. As I already mentioned, I have it on both sides of my family. And I started out like any other normal kid that's in a small town and you're bored and there's just not that much to do. So we spent a lot of time driving around, doing drugs and drinking and going to house parties in the wood and, you know, going out into the woods and starting a bonfire and having parties like that. And it's all, you know, it's this progressive thing in AA. They say, you know, it's fun and then it's fun with problems and then it's just problems. And that was very much my progression. And it just happened to hit me at a much earlier age than a lot of folks because I was sober before my 21st birthday.
Whoa.
So I've never had a legal drink. And yeah, I think what ended up happening was addiction is this progressive disease. And I went from experimenting with, you know, things like weed. And I don't think that weed is a gateway drug for people. I think that that's just propaganda. I actually really love weed. I think that weed is better than alcohol in a lot of ways. And I'm a big proponent of the legalization of weed everywhere, even though I don't use it anymore. So anyway, I started the same way any kid would. And that's where I think a lot of people get it wrong about addiction because we all, like something like 85% of teenage kids tried drinking and smoking weed in high school. So like you don't know when you're a teenager that like I'm predisposed to this disease of alcoholism, and you do it and then you keep doing it. And then like I didn't even realize that I was addicted until I was like already way hooked on painkillers, which another cultural thing of small blue collar towns is that you have a lot of people that get injured on the job because they're working blue collar jobs. And I'm sure you've seen the news lately where a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies are now getting sued because of their role in the opioid crisis that our country's facing. And that was also my story. Like I just had easy access to a lot of prescription pain medication, and it was just way too easy for a 17-year-old kid to get. So by the time I graduated high school, I was already a daily user of these things. And then it always gets worse.
Yeah, of course,
then I started doing heroin because...
Were you smoking or shooting?
I was shooting heroin. So I guess that's where the story actually gets interesting is I basically had this prescription addiction and did that for a while. And I went to rehab once because my family did an intervention. And
how did that go, the first intervention? Obviously not well, but...
Well, not well for me. I guess it was a win for everybody that got me into rehab. So I think that a key component for lasting sobriety is you need to hit a spiritual bottom. And I'll gladly talk about mine when we get there, but I wasn't there yet at age 19.
I believe that for everything in life.
Yeah, probably.
You have to hit your rock bottom.
Right. The pain of changing has to be less than the pain of staying the same. And unfortunately, we have high tolerances for emotional pain, and you often don't realize like how much pain you were sitting in until you're on the other side of it.
Completely.
So for me, I just wasn't there yet. I went to rehab. I didn't really have a choice. Like I said earlier, I bought clean time, basically. I was there for 4 months.
Wow.
And it was so tough because you're 19, you want to be with your friends, you want to be partying and doing these things. You don't want to be in rehab.
Did you feel a lot of shame and stuff during that time? Do you remember being tapped into that?
I don't think that I felt shame nearly as much as I felt FOMO. Because again, where I'm fortunate is that like my mother had already been through it. My grandfather had already been through it. So they knew, I think a lot of the shame for addiction comes in part because we are told these stories that it's like this moral failing, right? It's people that don't subscribe to the addiction as a disease of the brain and an allergy of the body philosophy think that it's just like this choice that you make. And like anybody, it doesn't really hold water because why would anybody choose to
live that? My mom certainly wouldn't choose to live the way she lives.
Right. But you feel like you don't have a choice, right? You just wake up and it's just like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's really just a disease of the mind and an allergy of the body. You're not thinking right. You don't feel right. You want to remedy how you feel. You start self-medicating. So I feel like I lost where I was, but...
You were in rehab.
Oh, I was in rehab. And yeah, I don't think I carried a lot of shame. I also don't think that I knew anything being a 19-year-old boy about self-care and like what that really entails, and it's work, right?
Totally.
Like you have to work on that type of stuff. And I just don't think it was even on my radar. So all I wanted to do was like do my time and get back to what I wanted to do, which was partying. So eventually I got out, and the following year and a half after that was awful. That was like, basically I started doing heroin in that time because the pharmaceutical companies that made OxyContin, which is what I was addicted to prior to the first rehab, changed their formula as a result of the backlash of people being addicted to it. And when they changed it, you could no longer really, they basically changed it to this type of formula that as soon as it gets wet, so typically you'd either shoot OxyContin or you'd sniff it. Both require it to get wet.
What's the high when you're snorting Oxy?
I mean, it's the same as heroin.
Really?
Well, because you can sniff heroin as well. On the East Coast, it's a little bit different. They do a lot more powdered heroin there. On the West Coast, it's tar heroin. Yeah. So, OxyContin is just basically pharmaceutical grade heroin.
Yeah.
There's no other way to really explain it. The fucked up thing, and the reason why all these pharmaceutical companies are under fire right now is because when they initially introduced OxyContin to the market, they told everybody it was non-addictive. I'm here to tell you that that is not the case.
I don't think there is an opioid that isn't addictive.
Right. I don't know of any either.
But we're all like believing them and all the other things they tell. Like I'm not going to go there. Anyways,
yeah, I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole of big pharma conspiracies for hours.
For hours, especially with the California stuff passing. I'm like highly considering moving to Texas right now.
Right,
and I have kids.
Yeah, it's a wild, wild world. And so, yeah, so that was once they changed the formula to it and they made it anti-abuse, you could really only chew them and eat them, which would still get you high. Like if you and I ate an OxyContin right now and we didn't need it for any pain,
we feel pretty chill.
Yeah, I'd say that's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
Probably be nodding out on the couch. But so, had some friends that had already started doing heroin. I was like, I want to try it. Next thing you know, like you just can't get a needle out of your arm. And obviously I'm not employable. So I'm stealing to fund my habit. And eventually, after a few car chases with like people catching me on their property, trying to steal something and then getting in their car and chasing after me. I mean, it was not a good time for me. And the police were on to me for the thefts. And like the state police like called me and they're like, we want you to come talk to us about these thefts that have been going on. And I was like, no. Like, yeah, I'll be right down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's not every drug addict is a thief. I just happen to be one, and that was my story. And I was a sick person. And, yeah, I remember I got into a fight with my roommate. He kind of beat me up too. And like I cried. Not because I was like in a lot of pain, but just because I was so beaten down.
Yeah.
And it got worse still because so I cried and I called my mom. So a grown man getting beat up, crying, calling his mom. And she showed up partially because she's very codependent, which she's also done a lot of work on. And partially because once you get sober, you're told that that's what you do for people who reach out for help. So she picked me up, dropped me off with one of her AA friends who was a very good man. And he started taking me to meetings, but I still couldn't get sober. And I didn't want to go back to rehab. So basically I was in this cycle of I would make it through the whole day, white knuckle, wouldn't do any drugs, go to a meeting at like 6:00 at night. And I'd come home and all I'd want to do is just get high. And I mean, you're just like crawling out of your skin and like nothing really makes you feel better. And then all of a sudden, like you have all this AA stuff in your head and this overwhelming desire to do drugs, like just running through your body, and detoxing from heroin feels like you have the flu. So that cycle went on for months.
Wow.
And that's sort of what led to I was just kind of spiritually broken. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. Like there was just I couldn't keep doing things the way I was doing them, and I couldn't imagine doing it any other way either. So you just feel so stuck. And luckily for me, my mom was somewhat aware when I basically disappeared for 48 hours and nobody could get a hold of me because I was getting loaded. And she had showed up at my house that I was living in the one morning. It was like, you need to go to treatment. And I was like, I'll go after the weekend.
Yeah. Like Monday.
Right. And that's actually exactly what I said. And I believe it was a Friday. It was a Thursday or a Friday. I was like, I'll go in on Monday. I have, some odds and ends to take care of before I go in, which I'm unemployed. And,
no, I've done this with my mom. Well, we have to get someone to watch your brother. Right. Like all the reasons.
There's a million reasons, right? And none of them are good or justifiable, but I think the people that are around you are just like, okay, whatever it takes, like I'll concede as long as you go on Monday. She really didn't want to. And I stole something, like I think it was like her camera or something, like that day. I was like, I'll stay with you over the weekend too, so you know that I'll be there Monday. And I immediately stole her camera or something. I mean, you're just talking about an insane person.
Oh, yeah. You're just feeding your addiction.
And you're just not right. Like, you just have no... I mean, there's like almost like a level of like sociopathy. Would that be the word?
I mean, yeah, you're a sociopath. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're living that
different
tendency. Yeah, you're not yourself. You're not your best self. And so you don't really care about the consequences. It's just very short-term thinking, immediate relief. And she was on me like white on rice. And it was immediate. She got me into rehab that day and kicking and screaming. But the funny thing is that Sunday, the state police executed a search warrant for me because I had been stealing for months on end. And they weren't able to serve me with it because I was already in treatment. Thank God, because detoxing in jail would have really sucked.
Oh my God.
Instead, I had like a more comfortable medical detox that they put you through. And even for the first week of rehab and treatment, I was like, I know what's best. Just this like ego that drug addicts have. It's truly remarkable. And I remember calling my mom, like, I'm going to go get a job. I want to get an apartment, and that's what I do. I don't want to go to any type of extended care. I did 4 months the last time. I'm not doing it this time. And it was like my moment of clarity because she really just stuck up to me. And she was like, nobody wants anything to do with you.
Wow.
And you have nothing to come back to. And I was like, well, fuck you then. Hung up on her. But then I had my moment where I was like, she's right. And I just had no answers left. Like, you try to find a million ways to make it work. Like, oh, maybe if I only use in the evening, or maybe if, I only do it on weekends, and I've
maybe
tried,
if I just have one drink.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then, one's too many and 1,000's never enough. So it just never worked for me. Like, I tried everything. And so I just surrendered to it. And I just said, look, these people are sober. The ones that are around me working in rehab, they seem happy, which I find it hard to believe. How can you be happy and sober? I'm just going to do what they tell me to do because I just had no more ideas. So, and I did. And now I've been sober for 8.5 years.
Wow.
But like I said, that's just the journey before the real journey where you actually have to do all the work on yourself.
And then figure out how to exist in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And walk through all of these situations sober, feeling the full spectrum of feelings and all this stuff, the highs and lows, the human experience, I guess you would say, without the aid of drugs and alcohol.
That's a good parlay into, I think, an interesting topic can be like you dating in sobriety. Because I've only known you through Max, and I only get like snippets from, the time that maybe we've spent together, or Max will explain. And I don't know if it's arguable that your time in LA, that you were kind of not like a fuck boy, but that's what they call people, right?
I'm sure my fiance is going to love listening to this, but I'll speak honestly.
That's the silver lining to get back to of where you're at today.
Right. Yeah, we can talk about dating. I think that, so as you get sober, you go through all the steps in AA, which I won't bore your audience with unless you ask
From
me
1 to 12. No, you can carry on. Most of them probably are quite familiar with them.
Yeah. And so I think a huge part of it is that as you do the work, you start to see patterns in your behavior. And part of the 4th step, which is usually the toughest part for people going through them, is you're basically taking a moral inventory of the things you've done, and sex is a part of it. like your relationships. And if you look at them all laid out and you say, okay, was I self-seeking? Was I, selfish in these, was I dishonest, in all of these interactions? And I think for me, I realized I was always self-seeking. And, that started to change, but it's a gradual thing. Like it doesn't. So I think my first few years of sobriety, you'll replace your addiction with other behaviors that may be unhealthy. I think a lot of it for me was definitely validation. You live in LA now, all the women look like you two, you're really beautiful. It's like you want to know, like, I'm just this kind of small town hick, like, can I
But what's so
interact with
funny
women?
is like most other people, I mean, obviously this is a total tangent, are just small town hicks too. Like we're both from small towns.
Right. Most
Like
of the people that live in LA.
People and everybody in LA. But sorry.
Yeah, no.
I digress.
Yeah. I mean, it is a fair point. Nobody that lives in LA is from here.
They're all like the insecure small town hicks that are just trying out other insecure small town hicks.
Right. Pretending that they're not small town insecure hicks. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. And I think that, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, fuckboy might be a good description. I'm trying to think of a more eloquent way to put it, but there really isn't one. Like, I think it's just self-seeking behavior. And I learned through fortunate relationships with women who are way more mature and thoughtful than I am that, like, you just can't act like that. And so it becomes about how you communicate your intentions from the beginning.
Yeah, the get-go.
So, like, maybe you do just want something casual with someone, right? Like, maybe you're just not in a place where you feel like you can, again, do the work.
Or maybe it's not the right person for you, and you just want an experience like that.
Right. Maybe it's just something physical and you don't really connect with them emotionally, but, like, you're like, shit, I'll have some fun. And so I think things changed for me when I learned to communicate upfront about those things.
It's huge.
And it's amazing in the dating world. So dating in LA sucks. It sucks. And I think that things started to change for me once I just was like, I value my time way too much to waste my time. And I also don't want to waste your time. So I want you to know that I'm only looking for something casual or I'm looking for something serious. But then you have to stick to it. You should not tell someone you're looking for something serious and then let them treat you like someone that's casual.
Completely.
And lie to yourself.
That it's going to turn into something
that it's going to change. Yeah. And so once I started doing that, believe it or not, people are receptive to it if you're just respectful of their time. And
I'd argue their feelings too.
Right. Yeah, I think that's also very, very important. Time, feelings, I mean, all of it. You're respecting them as a person.
Totally.
As a whole. By just being transparent in your intentions for your time together. And it's amazing how many people, for whatever reason, don't do that right up front in the beginning. And then you're like 2 months into something with someone and you're like, what is this? I don't know.
And someone's attached. And
what we are. And you have two people who are feeling two different ways. And they're like, oh, I thought we were going down a serious path. And the dude's like, oh, well, thought we were going down, whatever. I'll text you at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like, then you're like, shit, I wasted 2 months.
What would be your word of advice? And I'm actually going to kind of be gender specific at this in a way, targeted to single heterosexual women that are in a metropolitan city that get lost in the cycle over and over and over again.
I'm actually, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I do think that I am fairly good at this. Only because...
Are you saying like as an advice giver in dating?
Yeah, well, because, so I live next to two awesome, like, kick-ass women in Venice for 7 years, and they're like my very, very close friends to this day. And when their girls would come over, I would often like stop by, hang out, and they would all be talking about like, you know,
Dating.
these guys, and they're like trying to analyze these situations. And I'm like, I'm a very cut and dry, kind of straightforward person, which for better or worse, women don't always give that kind of advice to each other. And I don't know if it's just because you're more thoughtful and so you're considerate of your girlfriend's feelings or whatever, but I don't really care about that. And I would just be like, look, I can tell you with the utmost confidence that this guy really doesn't like you that much because there's a difference in people's behavior
1000%.
and actions. But when you're in it as the girl, you try to interpret the actions different than what they are.
Completely.
And dating in big cities is tough for a variety of reasons. I mean, dating in LA is just the absolute epitome of a nightmare because you feel like everybody's trying to trade up. So my advice is communicate in a straightforward way what you want from the beginning.
I really hope you're listening to this because like this was my specialty when I worked with clients is manifesting your partner. And as women, and again, I'm sorry to be gender specific in this because I know everybody can deal with this, but I would actually predominantly see this the most with my female clients in this age group seeking a serious relationship. You have to communicate your needs and wants. It's a really great fucking weeding out process too.
Right. And that's exactly what I call it. You got to weed them out. And it's important though, like if you say it, and look, there's no shame in like if you say it, but then you're like, oh, but he's like really cute. So like I'll let him like, you know.
Walk all over me for a little bit.
Or like, you know, I'll let him take me home. You know, like there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like girls want to get laid just as much as guys do or any other gender. I know we're talking more gender specific right now, but everybody wants to get laid. And that's fine. Like I think it's important to not carry shame about any of that type of stuff. But I think once you make your intentions clear and you kind of set boundaries, you have to stick to them.
1000%.
Because that other person, sometimes they will and sometimes they won't. And also I think that you need to sometimes connect with a third party that's more objective, you know, whether that's a therapist or whoever, like I'm sure.
Or Josey.
Yeah. Feel free, DM me on Instagram anytime. Ask Josey.
And Josey will be like, nah, that's a fuckboy.
Yeah. I mean, well, there was a movie. He's not that into you. He's just not that into you.
Yeah.
And that started because he had like a real life column where women would ask him these questions. And I mean, it's the same shit. Like, I mean, it's really not that difficult to tell. Like, dudes just aren't that good at finessing situations. Like, they're just not.
I would honestly argue only really watch actions, and if the person is into you, you won't question it. It's like that simple. You just won't question it.
Right. And
they
if
make
you
the effort.
And if you are questioning it,
call Josey.
Well, no, not even that. Don't call me. Don't call your girlfriends. Just ask them.
You just ask him.
Like, I think so many people are afraid to put their feelings out there early and often because they think, and again, it's a societal thing where like women are told that having feelings makes them crazy and like dudes don't have them or something. It's like this stupid thing. But like, respect yourself, love yourself enough to just say, this is what I want. This is what I'm here for. Do you also want this? And then as you're getting started, you've already established like those lines of communication. And like, if the dude thinks that you're crazy, then whatever.
Fuck
He's
him.
just
You
not
weeded him
emotionally
out.
on the same level
Exactly.
as you. And that doesn't make you crazy. That doesn't make you anything like that. Like, you're just, I mean, look, you're probably listening to this. You're probably a young professional in whatever industry, and maybe you want to find love. Maybe you want to find Mr. Tonight. Whatever it is, just communicate it.
Yeah.
And see what the person says. Like, it's amazing how far you will get in life just by asking for what you want. And it's amazing to me how many people are just like, well, like, do you think I should ask? Or like, oh, I'm not going to ask. What if they say no? Or and then you just waste your time.
Totally.
That's professionally or in love or with a friend that you're like,
Your contractor.
Yeah.
Anyone. So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode.
You're never going to get shit if you don't ask for it.
I agree. And I'm definitely going to go back and make the disclaimer that this is 1,000% applicable to every, dating scenario, whether same sex, trans, everything. But I find it to be very difficult when I was working with clients because of the stigma that culture has created that a woman's crazy if she's asking for that, in hetero couples. And I just really think it's important that they're listening, hearing it from a male who, arguably was a former LA fuckboy. Like it is so important to communicate.
It's going to be the title of my biography.
No, it's going to be the title of the episode. Josey, the fuckboy.
Hey, whatever it takes.
No, I think that was such a really important word of advice to everybody. But I think it's also now super important to tell people of your whole situation. You basically are engaged to your high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm going to disclaimer to any clients that I formerly had that would be like, but the person will come around again, right? That this is a very rare occasion and a very magical one. So tell us about your story together.
Okay, so Katie and I have known each other since we were 5 years old. I really only have nice things to say about her. Mm-hmm.
She's wonderful.
Partially because they're all true, and partially because I know she's going to listen to this. Mm-hmm. So maybe we edit out some of the fuckboy parts.
Yeah. Well, wasn't she living in Venice? She was like around witnessing this.
But I was more mild then. It was more early sobriety where I was kind of like an ass. By later sobriety, I kind of grown out of it. Mm-hmm. But so, yeah, my fiance and I have known each other for a very, very long time. In fact, she was on the same Little League baseball team as me when we were like 5, and she used to pinch my butt and get in trouble for it. And we dated in high school sweetheart. And then she went off to college and I went off to rehab. And college took her to Boston and I came out here to LA. And I think probably the most important part of our story so far was the years that we had apart. Because I certainly never imagined us getting back together. And I don't think she did either. And I think it was important to have other boyfriends and other girlfriends and just date and have that experience. Because look, part of that dating experience is going to be figuring out what you don't want in a partner. And as fate would have it, her younger sister got sober and she moved out to LA. And then Katie, my fiance, moved out a little while after that. She wanted to be closer to her sister. She needed a change. Winters on the East Coast are kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And we were roommates. We lived platonically.
For a while.
Yeah, for like 4 or 5 months, I think, until she got her own place. She's probably getting sick of me. I mean, towards the end of it, I think it was because we were obviously flirty, but we slept in separate rooms. We never once hooked up. It was nothing like that. And she's like, this career woman, and she like has her shit together. And my God, is she organized? And, I'm just not those things. I mean, I'm a career man, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not nearly as organized as she is. And I think probably living with me and playing house was getting a little bit tough. So she moved out. And again, there was no discussion of dating or anything like that. But we did spend a lot of time together and I loved her. I don't think I realized that I was in love with her, but I'm slow on these things anyway. So to be completely honest with you, I'm pretty clueless about most things. And one night she was like, she had come over and a few friends were hanging out and she was talking about like going to Morocco to like do something with the Peace Corps. She had like applied for it or whatever. I think she was having like a quarter life crisis maybe. And like the idea of her not being there was like, I had like a visceral reaction to it. I'm like, I don't want her to not be here anymore. Like I love being around her. What if she and I'm used to her now.
Wow.
And I think then I realized that I was there was more feelings involved. And I was like, can I take you out to dinner? And for whatever reason, she said yes. No idea why. And that's kind of that was like a date. Like I was like, can I take you on a date? Like this isn't just like a buddy dinner. And so we did that. And to be honest with you, it didn't, again, this is like a classic case of like, I thought like I knew how to court a woman and I had no idea. And after like a few weeks, I don't think I was meeting her emotional needs. And she was like, look, dude, this isn't really working for me. While looking back on her saying, this isn't really working for me, I think she was really trying to say like, you need to step it up, but she didn't really say it in those words. And so I was like, okay, like I kind of just accepted it. And so we didn't really date. It was like this like pause in it. And then we went to Japan together because we had planned this trip, and it's me, another buddy of ours, and Katie. We had planned this trip like a year in advance. And we went. We weren't really like seeing each other at the time. We all just went as friends. And Katie and I sort of wanted to have like a more historical Japan experience. And our friend Pat, like when he travels, he likes to go like drink with the locals. Like it was just a different experience. And that was fine, like live and let live. Katie and I just ended up spending a lot of time together. And we really fell back in love on that trip. And we've been back together ever since then. So thank you to Tokyo and Japan. But even then, and it's funny because like probably a year from now, like right now, I feel like, oh, I've really made so much progress in my relationship with her and being a partner and a teammate. And probably a year from now, I'll look back and be like, I didn't know shit then when I was on this podcast. But living with a woman who has her shit together and is an independent person has probably been one of the greatest experiences of my adult life, because men just don't know anything about like just like the day-to-day life of a woman, like what she has to deal with professionally. And she loves her work and her job. I don't mean to say anything like negative about that. It's just more like I mean, I think women have more of a platform now. We're all way more aware of what it's like to try and climb a corporate ladder as a woman. And, if you go even further into that, like, being part of a marginalized group and trying to do those things is even more so.
Absolutely.
But so I learned all these things, but just about like I never had to learn about like periods and stuff like that. Like to me, it was always like, all right, well, that's like a thing that I don't need to hear about. And it's just she's like just super casual about it. She has 3 sisters and like they're super casual about all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh. And now I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, do you need me to go get you like a heating pad and some cookies?
Oh my God, that's
whatever?
so great. Like, I love it.
Like,
she's really helped. Yeah.
She's whipped me into shape.
Yeah.
Because she's like, look, you live with me. We're planning on getting married. Like, you need to just buck up and get over it. But like, it's just like little boy stuff that you just grow out of.
Yeah. And
it's funny because like now it's just totally casual. She's like, oh, my cramps are killing me. I'm like, all right, well, like, how can I help? Instead of being like, because you really just have no idea what to do. You're like, just suck it up, whatever. And then like that look you get, like, I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
You say one more word to me about it. And so you really you grow, you learn a lot. I've learned that I was wrong about like 85% of the things that I thought I knew, and she's become better at communicating her needs. And I think when you get into a relationship and you start growing together, the number one thing is having these avenues of communicating. And I think that we over communicated almost in the beginning because even she got to the point where she's like, do we really need to have like a 45-minute talk about this stuff? And I was like, I guess we don't. But, I just wanted to try to do things the healthiest way possible. And now we've settled in. And it's like, I know her and I know all these things. And I know like, that she's a bit more of a sensitive person than I am. In fact, her and my mother tell me still that I'm insensitive. And I'm like, I thought I've made so much progress. But they're like, yeah, you just don't really understand how you sound sometimes. And so it's like, okay, well, I need to hear that. And I apologize a lot. And, the other, like a few weeks ago, I was like, I'm apologizing to you right now because I keep apologizing to you. And I clearly need to like change the behaviors and not just like apologize and think that that's good enough.
And continue. Yeah.
And so it's been, when you're living with someone in a relationship, it's basically like they just hold up a mirror.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to see all your shit and all your defects of character, and you either work on it and you grow in the relationship, or you gaslight, or you minimize that person's feelings. Manipulate and do these unhealthy behaviors. And then usually that relationship doesn't last so long.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. And so you guys just got engaged. It was about a month ago, right?
Yeah. Did I didn't finish that whole story?
No, you didn't. No, we didn't. But that's fine.
There.
Yeah.
So I'm a little scared. I feel like I've basically been like talking so much that like people are going to forget that you're even hosting the podcast.
Not at all. No. In fact, they're like, could Lacey stop talking so much on the podcast? We get that feedback all the time.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, great. Yeah. So I decided to ask her to marry me.
And it took you a minute, right? Like, was that a growth process within itself?
Well, yeah. So on one hand, yes. And on the other hand, I think I really knew that because we have such a history together, that like once we got back together, I'm 29, she's 29. We're not really like kids anymore. I'm not like a 22-year-old fuckboy anymore. Yeah. I have different desires
graduated.
Now.
Yep.
Right. So I graduated, and for whatever reason, and I don't intend for this to sound like a cop-out, but I genuinely feel like one of the ways that women are so much better than men is that they just seem to be emotionally way more evolved. Like, dudes are just dumb. Like, I don't know. We're just simple creatures in a lot of ways. And it doesn't make us bad people. It just seems to be like women grow up faster, I think. or maybe just are naturally more emotionally intelligent. And so I knew that getting back together at this age was going to be like shit or get off the pot. And I got into it knowing that. But I was like, I want to give it at least a year of living together before I do anything rash and emotional, because I'm very emotional. And I actually have a cute little story. So it was an emotional time over the summer where we were going to a lot of weddings, which always make me very emotional. I cry at every wedding.
I got to see you at one.
Yeah, you did. I was the best man at that one. So this one weekend in particular, we had to go to a wedding on a Friday night. We had to wake up at like 5 a.m. the next morning, which sucked, to go to my best friend's mother's funeral. She had passed away unexpectedly. And this is a woman who I cared about deeply. She was always good to me growing up, no matter what my behavior was. Like, it was always like, I'm always just going to love you. And so I'm sad about that. I'm emotional from the funeral. We're driving from Boston to Philly, and it's like a 6-hour drive. And she's like half asleep, half awake, like kind of hungover, like eating like this breakfast wrap with like one eye closed, like, you know, no makeup, just like a mess. And I was like driving, I look over at her, I'm like, I love her so much in this moment. And literally lied to her about where I was going, went and asked her dad for permission, because that I knew that was an important thing for her. She's very close with her dad, and like all within 24 hours of that moment. Like, we went to the funeral immediately that same day afterwards. I was like, oh, I got to go like see somebody real quick. And it was actually her dad.
Wow.
And so I had the talk with him, and he gave me his blessing, and I told her sisters, and they were very helpful in helping me spend money on a ring.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. That's awesome.
And then I went through the whole ring process, and then we were back in actually Long Island for a wedding, and I had already had it planned that I was going to do it once we got from Long Island to Boston. So we had this little trip plan to go to a wedding in Long Island, Vineyard the next day. On Sunday, we were going to be taking a ferry into New England, and I couldn't wait to get to New England, so I just did it on the ferry.
I think that's so romantic and sweet.
It is, but you know what the funny part is that like that's like the storybook version of it. The reality is that, you know, we were on the boat. It was like a long weekend. I was like, hey, do you want to like get a picture with me? Because we had some friends with us on the boat. Like, her best friends were there.
That's awesome.
They all knew who was about to go down.
Yeah.
I was like, do you want to get a picture? And she was like, honestly, like, I feel kind of puffy right now. And like, we got like a bunch of photos like over the wedding, like really cute photos of us. I really don't want to have my picture taken right now.
Aww.
And our friend Paul was like, Katie, get up and take a picture with your boyfriend, please. Because he knew. So he like kind of gave me the assist in that one. And then once she got up to take the picture, I was like, will you marry me?
Aww.
And I dropped down on a knee, and she was like crying and said yes. And I was like really nervous. And
was it unexpected for her?
Oh, she had no idea.
Wow.
Like, she knew that it was going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
But I did as much as I could to throw her off the trail.
Wow.
So yeah, she didn't really see it coming. And then now we're in the phase of planning the wedding, which is...
Max and I can't seem to get there. For both of us, it just seems like so much work and money and thoughts. And we're like, let's just buy another house.
She's... right, hey, listen, sign me up for doing that.
Yeah.
That's an easier process than doing the wedding because, you know, it's so... Luckily for me, she's so detail oriented
and good at this, I bet.
And like has probably had a Pinterest board with wedding inspiration planned for like 5 years. So it's like she's just hammering stuff out. And like, luckily, again, the first place we went to, we both really love. So everything's
Great.
kind of running its course. And I'm
Man,
not
I
going to
should
bore
marry
these people
Katie.
with my. Yeah, please do.
Much
You guys would be awesome together.
We'd probably nail out a really epic
my
wedding.
gosh, you guys would have a beautiful wedding, and you guys are both like smart, like fun. You guys would crush it. People would be like, "Oh, you should meet this couple."
Yeah,
Katie and Lacey, they are awesome. They're so like. They are people you need.
You'd come to our dinners that we make and stuff, right? Yeah.
It's a networking thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I love that. And I think that's really inspiring for anybody who's out there and kind of in the dating thick of it and the happy ending. I think something that we connect on a lot that's really fun, or we both have common interest in, is finance.
Yeah.
And I think I love educating as much as we can the community to like your top financial resources, and then also what are your biggest takeaways you think are the most important right now?
Okay. Well, so in my sobriety, I've tapped into my more entrepreneurial things, which is kind of what brought me on the podcast. We didn't even talk about.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
We will get there. So I've been fortunate enough to have some success in my entrepreneurial endeavors. And then as you start
Not Dyer and Jenkins, but current.
my current ones, yes. I've also failed a lot.
Yeah.
Which is
we'll
part
talk
of the
about
journey.
that too. Yeah.
So as you start to get older or whatever, you kind of find your professional groove, you start to make some more money, and you're like, okay, well, what do I do with it? Because I don't want to work super hard forever.
And to keep doing it, yeah.
Right. And so you're like, if I have the opportunity here, how can I set myself up for financial freedom, right? Not having to deal with the constraints and the fears of not being able to make rent or whatever. And
the hamster wheel.
The hamster wheel, yeah. And so I'm an avid reader. Like, I think that's something that I do addictively, is just like I'm consuming a lot of information. And so I picked up like every top financial book I could read. I've read.
Yeah, what are your favorites? We obviously know it's definitely Ramit.
Yeah.
Right? I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which you and Grace on our team turned me onto at the same time.
Yeah. Ramit, that's such a good book because it's so simple, right? So as you start to get into this world, it's very easy to get bogged down in the complexity of all the financial instruments that are available.
And not do anything.
And so then you don't do anything, in decision paralysis. So there's books like that. I think, even though I'm hesitant to say it because hasn't had a very good outing as of late, but Tony Robbins.
I love his as well.
His book, Unshakable, basically it's just a collection of interviews with a bunch of dudes who, like Warren Buffett, and I think
are financially, like financial institutions.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are of the rare breed that they can just like pick a stock and it'll do well, but they're different. They're smarter than me. I can't do what they do. And basically that's, in not so many words, that's what they say in that book. And they say, instead, you should do this. And they provide a very clear, non-stressful sort of pathway to financial freedom that anybody can do. I mean, even if you're only able to save $10 a month,
you're at Starbucks,
something,
right? Yeah, you're at Starbucks. You have a little tiny bit, exactly, of a little bit of expendable income. That's like, even then, to start putting away,
right? And like, you can find it. And one thing that I like about Ramit is that he often says, you know, the frugality side of finance isn't really like a mindset of abundance. And so like you can only squeeze so many pennies out, but you can always figure out how to make more money.
And that's what we talk about, like in my workshops. It's like open portals,
right?
Open new portals of streams of income.
Yeah. And it's I think probably one of the biggest preconceived notions that people have about money and capitalism and business is that it's this zero-sum game. They think that if somebody else is winning, that means that somebody else is losing, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can go out and make money if they make up their minds to do it. I don't think that I am the world's smartest person. I think I'm of average intelligence. I've been very fortunate, but I also work very hard at it. And, I have my own privileges and things that have helped me along that way. It's not, I don't think by any means that I've done it by myself, but I've had success. And then it's like, what do you do with it? And you try to put yourself in the best possible place to make proper financial decisions. So I would say the easiest two books to absorb would be Unshakable and I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I think if you want to learn deeper about different types of investing, there's a man named Benjamin Graham.
Oh, I don't know him.
Who wrote, he basically was Warren Buffett's teacher.
Oh.
So he wrote a book about value investing, which is what they do. So value investing, I'm not an authority, but the simple version of it is Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, who are business partners, focus on value investing, which is buying something and holding it for a very long time. So Warren Buffett, for the longest time, famously talked about how he wouldn't invest in tech companies because he didn't understand them. He's old school, but he loved companies like, I think he's probably held Coca-Cola stock for decades because they're an institution and he just believed in them long term. And so it's far more in depth than that because it does have to do with like studying the financials of a company, but publicly traded companies make their financials publicly available.
Accessible, yeah.
So that's more advanced reading, but it's just interesting from the perspective of how do these guys think of money? Because it's different than for you or me. Like we're not billionaires.
Totally.
I mean, unless you are, you might be. I don't know. Maybe one
I'm on
day.
my way.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Progress, not perfection.
Yeah. I see you, Oprah.
Yeah.
I'm coming for you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oprah's a queen.
Yeah.
And I'm
what is
sure
that? 6 billion?
something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, her story is amazing.
Amazing. So inspirational.
It's so good. And so these people that you would read about in your journey through personal finance, like Warren Buffett and his business partner, Charlie Munger, is really good as well. They just have a different viewpoint on money than the average person does. And another thing that I really enjoy about what Ramit says is he talks about internal scripts and the stories that you tell yourself about money. And it's amazing how many people close themselves off to it just because they've either been brought up to believe or over time have begun to think that money is this bad thing. Money is just money.
Money's freedom. That's what I see it as.
Right. I believe, yeah, exactly. I think money enables spontaneity and that is freedom. And I think that it's all about how you use money. I think that conscious capitalism is a thing that people are going to start embracing more. I think our generation doesn't really care as much if you make money, but they expect you to sort of give back.
Yep.
And there's a lot more you can do. And like, I think that the world needs creators out there making their stuff, delivering whatever gift you have to people. People will pay you money for that gift. And then it can be this positive cycle and not this zero-sum game thing that so many people believe. So, yeah.
Also, like one of the biggest ways to change the world, is having resource. That's when you have power, and I don't know if that was just a meme I saw recently, but it's like become a billionaire is where you can make like the big, and I'm just throwing out a crazy number, but I think that was the meme in this. I don't even know if it's true, but that guy who bought so many, hundreds of acres or thousands of acres in the Amazon now, so it can just be a reserve and not used for any resource extraction. It's like you have that ability when you have resources.
Right.
To make big change.
And, and then there's also forces that have money and they make changes that are very self-serving. But like it's up to you, listener, to be the person that stops that.
Yeah, conscious capitalism.
Right. We need more of that.
Yeah.
And that's just my opinion. But I mean, there's plenty of unconscious capitalism and we see the results of that on a daily basis. People that destroy the environment and people that, take advantage of other people and all of these things. I think there's a better way to do it. That's just my belief.
And what are that you've taken away from all of these, your top, for the person who has, maybe just a 401k or like limited, expendable income, what would be your top 3 tips to do with it right now?
Well, the first thing I would say is focus on how you are spending your time because you either have money or you have time. Usually you don't have both, right? Like if you have a lot of time, chances are you don't have that much money because
unless
you're retired.
Or unless it's working for you.
So let me rephrase. If you're in the position where, let's say you're working a 9 to 5, right? You make a median salary and you have a little bit of money that you're putting in savings. If that money is just sitting in your savings account, your money is not working for you. Part of the reason why rich people become rich is because of compound interest. Compound interest, as Albert Einstein once said, is the greatest invention of mankind. That is the reason why rich people stay rich. If your money's sitting in a savings account at Wells Fargo or Chase or whatever,
at
you're not making
0.01%.
shit. Yeah. And with inflation, you're probably actually just losing money. And so you're better off doing things like automatically putting $100 or whatever a month, whatever you can sustain from your savings into a target date fund, which is something that Ramit recommends. I would approach it like if you do want to pick stocks or whatever, index funds are usually the best. That's just
Tony Robbins.
Yeah. And that's just basically you're betting on an entire sector. So an index fund will be made up of a bunch of different companies in one stock. So you could do like a tech index fund if you believe in the long-term gains of tech in America.
Or wellness.
Right. They have a bunch. You can find index funds that literally just match the market all the way. So it would be, the S&P 500, right? So
is it Ramit that says that over time it shows that Target has like an 8%?
So
gain?
those are index funds.
Because Target and Low they're different because one needs more babysitting.
Right. So if you're managing your own money, that requires more babysitting. With a target date fund, basically, if you go to Charles Schwab, you create an account with them. You say, I'd like to start a target date fund. I hope to retire in 20 years.
5, yeah.
Yeah, 5, 20. I hope to retire in a year. They probably won't be able to help you too much.
Not a lot of interest, that 8% over time.
But, depending on the length, if you're young, you're in your 20s or your early 30s, and you have 30 more years where you could possibly be earning money, you got to communicate that to them, and they'll say, okay, you can set a target date for, 2030, 10 years from now. And they might be a little bit more aggressive with it. But the nice thing about it is that they rebalance your portfolio for you. So you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah. And that's why I think he suggests it for the average person, because it takes literally the littlest amount of education, work time, but it has like, and am I correct in that, over time about an 8% return?
Yeah, I think it's 7.
7?
But
Okay.
that's like the average return, I believe, of most index funds
Okay.
over the long term. So like you might not get that, like if you put money in today, a year from now, you might not get it. But like over the course of 10 years, it'll probably even out
On average.
to about 7-8%.
Yeah.
Obviously, all those things are subject to change, but the historical data shows you that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's an interesting world, but it doesn't have to be this scary thing, and it doesn't have to be this unapproachable, inaccessible thing. Like I think people, again, with bad scripts or bad internal stories that they tell themselves, say, well, that's something only rich people can do. And it's
or someone with a corporate job or a whatever. Like if you're a waitress right now, if anything, waiter, whatever, you can start this right away with just your tips.
Yeah,
live on the other parts.
And it's very, very difficult. Like I think it's very difficult in some situations where like, hey, you might barely be making ends meet. You might barely be making ends meet. In that case, I would say you need to think more about creating additional revenue streams because you just don't have the money at all. Like you might not have a spare dollar. And in that case, it's more about focusing on how you spend your time and finding new ways to earn more money. And, look, there's going to be people that are going to say, well, that's real nice, but I can't do that or whatever. And again,
then you need
bad
to do
stories.
You need to do unblocked money if you believe that, because again, it's just limiting beliefs, subconscious beliefs.
It's truly amazing how many people damn themselves to failure before they even start.
I know.
And it's just like it does not have to be that way. And like just like in the relationship thing, like chances are somebody that is successful. Ask them for help. I mean, seek out resources like this podcast, like good books, audiobooks, however you prefer to learn.
Expanders.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's all so important. How you spend your time, what you do with your money, and your relationships. Those are 3 things worth sitting down and taking an honest stock of. I
agree. And honestly, at the end of the day, I've always heard this story, on average when they interview people on their deathbed and they're like, what were the most important things to you? And I just asked that question to my 91-year-old grandpa, who was a president of, agricultural banks and did really well for his family. It kind of like stopped with my dad, and I didn't get any of that. But I asked him, and he was like, my family. So it's like really looking at time and looking at the quality of your time and how you can support that to create the life that you want, I think is such an important inventory.
I totally agree with you. I think I've also read the Regrets of the Dying, and that is it is like the top one, like didn't get to spend enough time with the people that I cared about. And so I think always when I approach a goal, I always start with the end goal, whether that's like I want to be now a great husband, hopefully a great father one day. I want to be worth, $50 million. That's just a number, but I think it's good to attach a number to it.
Goal, yeah.
Having specific goals, like you need to state them and be specific about them, because if you have vague goals, you're not going to go anywhere. And you always start with the goal and then work backwards. And people just seem to not really do that as often.
Or even feel like they have the worth or the self-worth to even think that they're worthy of that goal. That's where a lot of it stops. And I think it's really important to highlight that. All right. Well, I think that's a good way then to segue into being an entrepreneur in a nutshell. Like how it wasn't successful until it became successful.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So my journey through entrepreneurship was, I knew always that I wanted to start a business because I had audacious goals. It's really hard to become wealthy, which was just one of my goals.
Me too. It always has been.
It's an ambition thing. It's a freedom thing. You may not like the rules, but those are the rules of life.
I think a lot of mine too is to break the cycle of like being poor and Irish, like the programming in my family.
My mother will love that.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to become wealthy working for somebody else, right? But that's okay because some people don't have the goal to become wealthy. Some do. I assume if you're listening to this podcast, maybe you're a little bit more on the ambitious side in that way. And also I really have always struggled with authority figures. So I didn't really like the idea of having a boss telling me what to do all the time. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be my own boss. I failed at that twice.
What was the first one?
The first one was a online men's clothing store. And then I was
so just straight e-commerce.
Straight e-commerce,
wholesale.
But no, retail. Selling other people's stuff.
Yeah, wholesaling other people's stuff, right.
And then that didn't do so well, but I was like 20 then. That was like right when I got sober. So that was a colossal, I don't want to call it a waste because I learned a little bit, but not quite enough. Then I did the denim company, Dyer and Jenkins, with Max. And that was
it was actually quasi-successful though.
Yeah, we had it going. Like it had a consistent source of revenue. It was just difficult. Clothing companies are notoriously difficult to scale because you deal with so many returns, exchanges, these things, and it just...
And inventory to even get a season out is insane.
Very, very difficult to manage. And you really have to have a high tolerance for the emotional roller coaster in clothing. And I think
Max is addicted to insanity.
I
mean, I just every day he comes home, I'm like, really? You love this. You love it.
He likes being in the chaos of it. I would agree with that. I think it just wasn't for me. We never quite got it to where we wanted it to. Like it was doing fine, and maybe we could have stayed the course a while longer, but things got messy, and we had a business partner relapse, and that had an effect. And there was just a variety of things. We all made mistakes as well, and we just ran out of money. In the process of that, I had started consulting. Because I had learned a lot about marketing in that
something we have to touch on in a minute too.
Yeah. And I really like consulting because I like talking, obviously.
Clearly.
Like hearing myself talk. And so I started consulting. I was consulting a friend who was in the electronic cigarette industry. I ended up investing in that business and becoming a partner. That business has been amazing. But beyond the bad press that Juul gets for the whole industry, our business has been pretty well. It's done pretty well. And I'm very grateful for it. And it's also, despite a lot of the news lately, it's helped a lot of people that I know personally quit smoking.
It helped Max. I gave him an ultimatum. I was like, you literally have to take a shower when you get home and come into the house because it's making me sick, your cigarettes. And he swapped to Juul, and it's honestly made our relationship work. My
father smoked 2 packs of Marlboro Reds a day. I would give him our products, and he barely even smokes his electronic cigarette anymore.
Wow.
Like it's supposed to be a harm reduction tool. And I won't go too deep into the electronic cigarette thing. I don't care if you want to axe the whole part of it.
I think we should leave in all of these directorial points from Josey. They're funny.
The director's cut.
Yeah. Unedited, unbridged, or whatever you call it.
Behind the scenes. The journey of entrepreneurship has the success of my last business that I have has led me and my business partners from that business to create Hugs, which is our CBD company that I love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love waking up and working on it every day. I'm like so motivated. And
The branding's fantastic.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Pat myself on the back for putting together the team that did that. But I can't only credit myself. There's like everybody in the team loves CBD, and they've been enjoying the process of starting this brand. And I think it's kind of contagious, and it comes through in the marketing and the branding. We just get to have fun with it. Like you're constantly testing and iterating and doing all these different things, but it's been so fun, and we're mission driven. So we donate a percentage of sales every month to this charity called 10,000 Beds, which helps people who are suffering with addiction and alcoholism get into treatment.
Are most of the partners sober?
Yes.
Wow.
So all three of my business partners are sober. We all own the company equally, and it's been really, really great.
And you guys were in business together through the vaping company as well.
Correct, yeah.
And so how did this line, like the CBD, how did this come to be?
So one, the regulatory landscape of the electronic cigarette world is kind of unclear. And unfortunately, sometimes with government, and I'm not the type of capitalist that says no regulation is good regulation.
Mm-hmm. You're not a full libertarian.
No, only partially. But I think because I think some people take advantage and they ruin things, and there needs to be regulations for that. However, the government has a long history of using a sledgehammer when a fly swatter would do just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so CBD was born out of, one, a need for transparency in that industry, because we were reading all these articles about like people getting sick from taking knockoff CBD with synthetic THC in it and all this stuff. And we're like, okay, we really think that there's room here to create a brand that felt accessible. A lot of CBD brands look like your grandmother's vitamins.
I know.
And it's like, ugh, it's just like, it's not what our generation wants to take. A. B, there wasn't really any charitable brands that I could find at first glance. So it's like, let's have a mission attached to this thing. And B, like, let's give something to people that they know that they can trust. It's not going to like fucking make them feel like they just like smoke spice or whatever, like synthetic, and like have like a complete and total panic attack. Like, no, this is a great product that I was already taking, that I love. And I just thought I could do it better. And I thought I had a good enough team around me that we could do it better. And so we really launched it only 2 months ago, although we've been working on it since the beginning of the year. And
what makes this particular CBD different? Or for the person who's never tried CBD, what do they need to know?
Okay. For the person who's never tried CBD, whether you end up buying from Hugs or another CBD brand, the number one thing that you need to know is that any reputable CBD brand will post the lab results of their products on their website for all to see. That's how you know that you're getting what you're supposed to be getting. So we don't sell anything unless it's been third-party lab tested, not just for potency, but you want to make sure that there's no pesticides, there's no mycotoxins, there's no heavy metals, because, you know, things get pulled out of the soil intentionally or not. Hemp is a plant that kind of sucks up everything.
A weed.
Yeah. And so that's the number one thing. Don't buy from somebody unless they have lab tests readily available, or if you email them and ask them, they give them to you. They're not worth your money if they can't self-regulate to that extent. That's the number one most important thing. The next thing I would say is every person's different. We all have endocannabinoid systems. Dogs like Barley have them as well. Hemp-derived CBD, THC, they all interact differently with all of us. And you need to find what's right for you. So if you were on our website and you're okay with having trace amounts of THC in your product, I'd recommend our lower strength 500 milligram tincture. When you buy it, it'll have little directions with it on how to use it. Follow the directions. Don't overdo it. See how you feel. It works best when you've been taking it consistently for a week or so. It needs time to build up in your system. And just figure out what works for you. I mean, that's, a lot of homeopathic things are based on the individual. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And I think more than anybody how well or poorly you feel. And so that's my recommendation. If you're thinking of trying it for whatever reason, there's a variety of them that people...
Pain, like stress, anxiety, nausea. I mean, there's just so many reasons that it can be very helpful.
Exactly. And so...
I actually have a funny story recently that my dad, who CBD has totally transformed his life and his back issues and arthritis. And this is a guy who, when I was eating brown rice, was making fun of me, would not go into this realm whatsoever. Now stops and gets it, especially for roping. He's a roper. And he has a horse named Yogi, this Palomino, that I think is so beautiful. And it has an injury and it's, I don't know, hoof, what we would call our ankle, And I was like, well, Dad, can't you just give it CBD? He's like, Lacey, I can hardly afford to give myself CBD. I'd have to give that fucking horse a trough of CBD daily.
Yeah. I cannot prescribe it for horses because I don't know how much they need to take.
Yeah.
But you do raise a good point that CBD is very expensive. Yeah. We try to do that a little bit differently as well. We come in at the lower end of the spectrum on pricing. Different folks sell it at different prices. I think.
Why is that? What's the markup? What's going on?
Can.
Oh, it's just a financial margin.
I think for a lot of people that's the case.
So you're just making it accessible to help people.
Yeah, I would rather, from a business perspective, velocity is more important to me. Being completely transparent about that. We'd rather sell more than sell a few and have people have to spend half their paycheck on it.
That's how we feel about making our courses really accessible. People do these for $1,200, for me. I mean, it works for him, but I'm also no, I want everybody to be able to do this work.
Right. And so that's really the decision that you make internally, right? Yeah. It's I believe that CBD truly helps people and I want as many people to have it as possible. And I don't want it to be something that is pricing people out because they need relief or they want to at least see if it'll give them some relief. And I don't want them to be like, oh my God, it's $200 for a bottle. I mean, some people sell it for that and it's just so out of this world astronomically priced. So we're trying to do that a little bit differently as well. Yeah, so that's another reason why you should check out Hugs.
CBD.
Oh, and also I'd like to say, if you have any CBD questions, DM us on Instagram, email us through the website, whatever way is convenient for you to contact us, contact us. We're happy to answer any questions. Our lab tests are right in the About Us section of the website. You can see everything you need to know there. Ask away.
And what would you say you've seen people have the most success with CBD at what dose for how long in terms of different ailments or issues?
It's so hard to say because it depends on the individual.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with bioavailability, meaning how much of the CBD does your body actually absorb. So vaping it is actually the best way, but we don't make vape products because we just haven't tested enough that we really loved. And so we basically test every product on ourselves first. And again, even that comes down to the individual. So when you eat something like a CBD gummy, your stomach acid eats away a lot of it and you don't always absorb as much of it. But my girlfriend damn it, fiance.
Yeah, I know it took Max a while. Now he calls me his wife.
Yeah.
He really does call me his wife. But I'm like, what?
Yeah, I may as well just start calling her my
You
wife.
should. Yeah.
My fiance loves the gummies.
Mm-hmm.
Like she just enjoys to take them as she takes her daily multivitamin or whatever. And I personally prefer the tinctures. The tinctures are the second best way to absorb THC. You drop them under your tongue, hold it for 30 seconds, let it absorb, and then you swallow it. That's the way I enjoy doing it the most. I've found that after taking it for about 2 weeks, I noticed just my general mood improved and my anxiety levels seem to be lower. And I usually like to take a dropper full in the morning when I wake up and a dropper full at night before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the routine that's worked best for me. And like my anxiety, my sleep, my general well-being. Okay. So, but again, everybody has to test it on themselves and kind of figure out what's best for you.
We're nearing the holidays. And I actually have a funny story about this too, because my mom, I think she drinks for multiple reasons. Like we obviously come from, a long line of alcoholism, but hasn't dealt with any childhood trauma, is a paramedic that sees nothing but trauma every day and doesn't deal with it, and is also ADHD. So she has no attention span for anything. So I went home one holiday and I was like, my mom's so much to deal with during the holidays. And I know she's going to spin out and get anxious if we're doing things. And so I just brought home pot honey. I put it in her coffee. And we were going Christmas shopping for the day, and I would walk to the car and she's just pulling out gray hairs, looking at her mirror, so chill. But
did you tell her?
Yeah, later on I was like, I spiked you, and she was like, because she really doesn't like to be out of control, which is fascinating that she's literally
drinks all the time,
passed out, wasted by 5 p.m.
Right.
So but for somebody who's wanting to actually, I wouldn't use the word medicate, but do something to dose themselves, because I think it's really important to explain to people that you're only getting trace amounts of right THC in this. But if you're wanting to support yourself during the holiday and maybe stressful environments and family environments,
take some CBD, see how it works for you. I think a lot of people have trouble with the in-laws or whatever during holidays, and you just want to be like, you know what, whatever, bro, chill out. Yeah. Take some, be like the dude.
Maybe introduce it to your family. Put it in your family stuff.
With most likely you should get their consent first. Legal disclaimer. But yeah, it certainly does make hey mom, you need to chill the fuck out. Yeah. Here's a gift for you. Yeah. Makes for a great stocking stuffer.
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah. And it is near the holiday season right
I know. My favorite time of year.
Is it?
Yeah.
I like Halloween.
I love Halloween.
I do a 31 days of Halloween movie marathon.
Do you really?
Yeah.
So you basically do what people do for Christmas or that time of year?
Yeah. I mean, I love Christmas too because I get to eat lots of food and get presents and
there's
stuff.
football.
And there's football.
Yeah.
I love football season. But yeah, I love horror movies. Mm-hmm. In particular, Japanese horror movies are always the scariest.
What are the top ones?
Well, cool. The most well-known ones are obviously The Ring, but the original Japanese version, and then The Grudge, but the original Japanese version are so horrifying.
Really?
Those, and then, I mean, there's a bunch. If you just look up J horror... That's what they call that genre, J-horror. And it was in the early 2000s, from 2000 to 2010, the aughts, I guess they call that time period. There's some fucking fire, scary ass Japanese horror movies that came out in there. They're so good though. The Japanese ones actually scare me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Josey, for being on the podcast and being an expander for many, many things and giving us such great tips and for sharing hugs with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And if anybody needs anything, whether that's
dating advice,
dating advice, addiction recovery advice, or I'm not that great at financial advice yet. There's people that are smarter than me I'd refer you to, or hugs advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.